The last passenger. The train lurched forward, its old metal wheels screeching against the tracks. The night outside was dense with fog, swallowing the world beyond the dimly lit windows. Inside, a group of 5 friends, Noah, Clara, Ethan, Jess, and Marcus, sat together in an otherwise empty train car. Their laughter and conversation filled the space, a stark contrast to the eerie silence that had settled over the rest of the train. "This is weird, right?" Jess mused, adjusting her scarf as she glanced around. "Where is everyone?" Ethan smirked, stretching his legs across the aisle. "Midnight train. No one's crazy enough to take this route except us." The truth was, they had missed their bus back from their weekend getaway and had no choice but to take the last train out of the small town. A train that, according to the schedule, wasn't supposed to run anymore. But when they arrived at the station, there it was, waiting. Noah, always the rational one, shrugged. Probably just an unscheduled train. Maybe a worker's shift change or something. But where are the other passengers? Clara's voice was hushed, her fingers gripping the strap of her bag. Marcus, the skeptic of the group, scoffed. "You guys are acting like this is some horror movie. Relax. We'll be home in a couple of hours." Yet, as the train moved deeper into the night, their unease grew. It wasn't just the emptiness, it was the feeling. The air was off, thick with something unspoken. The lights overhead flickered sporadically, casting shadows that seemed to stretch too far. Then, there was the conductor. A tall man in a neatly pressed uniform had walked through their car shortly after departure. His face was obscured by the brim of his cap, and his voice was low and almost mechanical when he asked for their tickets. When Clara handed hers over, his fingers brushed against hers, ice cold, like he had been standing outside in the dead of winter. And then, without another word, he moved on, disappearing into the next car. Marcus, never one to miss an opportunity to joke, grinned. $10 says he's a ghost." "Not funny," Jess muttered, rubbing her arms as if shaking off a chill. Time stretched on. The scenery outside remained unchanged, fog, darkness, a landscape that seemed to loop endlessly. Then, the first truly strange thing happened. Ethan glanced at his phone, frowning. "Guys, I swear my battery was at 70% when we got on. It's at 5 now." Clara checked hers. Dead. One by one, they realized their phones had either drained or shut off entirely. "Okay, that's weird," Noah admitted, his brow furrowed. A distant sound echoed through the train. A muffled, rhythmic thump-thump. "Do you hear that?" Jess whispered. They fell silent. The noise was steady, growing louder. Footsteps. But not from the car ahead. From the car behind them. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. "Maybe it's the conductor?" Marcus offered, but his voice was quieter now. The doors at the end of their car shuddered. The handle rattled. A pause. Then. A knock. Just once. Soft. Almost polite. The friends exchanged uneasy glances. "Should we?" Ethan started, but before he could finish, the door slid open. The hallway beyond was dark. Pitch black. And standing there, just at the threshold, was a figure. A passenger. Their face was hidden beneath the brim of a hood, their body wrapped in a tattered coat. They stood motionless, silent, as if waiting for something. The air in the train car turned ice cold. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, the figure took a single step forward. The lights overhead flickered violently. And in that split second of darkness, the figure was suddenly closer. Jess let out a sharp breath, gripping the edge of her seat. What the hell is going on? The figure tilted its head, as if studying them. Then, without warning, the train lurched violently, sending the friends sprawling. The lights went out completely. And from the darkness, a whisper. "You were never supposed to be here." The train kept moving, deeper into the fog. And the last passenger had arrived. Darkness swallowed the train car. The only sound was the frantic breathing of the 5 friends as they scrambled to their feet, their bodies tense with panic. The lights flickered back to life, dim, unstable. And the figure? Gone. Marcus exhaled sharply, his voice unsteady. What the hell was that? No one had an answer. Jess clutched Clara's arm. "We have to get off this train. Now." Noah was already moving toward the emergency stop lever near the door. He pulled it hard. Nothing. He yanked again. The lever refused to budge. Ethan ran to the window, pressing his hands against the glass. "We have to break it. We can jump." But when they looked outside, their stomachs sank. The train wasn't just passing through fog. It was moving through nothing. No landscape. No stars. No station lights in the distance. Just an endless void of swirling darkness. There's nowhere to jump to," Clara whispered. Then, from the far end of the car. Click. The door handle rattled again. Jess grabbed Noah's wrist. "He's back." The friends stumbled backward, their bodies pressed against the opposite end of the car as the door creaked open. The conductor stepped through. His uniform was pristine, his hat tilted just enough to obscure his eyes. His expression was neutral. Unreadable. "You should return to your seats," he said, his voice a deep, hollow monotone. "Passengers must remain in their assigned areas." Ethan stepped forward, fists clenched. "Who the hell are you? Where is this train going?" The conductor regarded him for a moment before tilting his head slightly. "This is the final route," he replied. "There are no stops." Clara's breath hitched. "That doesn't make any sense. Every train has a destination." For the first time, the conductor smiled. It was subtle, wrong, like a movement his face wasn't used to making. "This train reaches its destination when the last passenger takes their seat." Silence. The friends exchanged uneasy glances. Noah swallowed hard. "We're the only ones here." The conductor didn't respond. Instead, he slowly turned his head toward the row of empty seats lining the other side of the car. And that's when they saw it. One of the seats was no longer empty. A figure sat there. Not the hooded passenger from before. This one was different. A girl. Young. Pale. Her long, dark hair hung in tangled strands over her face, her hands resting motionless in her lap. She hadn't been there before. Clara's voice was barely above a whisper. Who is that?" The conductor's eerie smile lingered. "The next passenger." Marcus took an unsteady step backward. "Nope. I'm done. We're getting out of here now." He bolted toward the door leading to the next car and grabbed the handle. Locked. He turned to the conductor, his patience snapping. "Open this damn door." The conductor merely adjusted his uniform. "Passengers must remain in their assigned areas." Marcus raised a fist as if to strike him, but before he could move, the lights went out again. A rush of icy air swept through the car. And then, a whisper. Low, almost melodic. "One by one, you'll take your seat." Jess gasped. "Who said that?" The darkness seemed to move around them, thick and suffocating. Then, as quickly as it had come, the lights flickered back on. The conductor was gone. And so was Marcus. Clara spun in place. Marcus? He was nowhere in the car. Gone. Vanished. Like he had never been there at all. The remaining four friends stood in stunned silence, their hearts pounding. Then Ethan's voice came, weak and trembling. "Look." They turned toward the row of seats. And there, sitting beside the strange girl, was Marcus. Or what looked like him. His face was blank, his eyes dull and lifeless. His hands were placed in his lap, mimicking the girl's posture. He didn't blink. Didn't move. Jess shook her head violently. "No. No, no, no. That's not him." Clara took a cautious step closer. "Marcus?" He didn't respond. Didn't even acknowledge them. His skin was pale now. His expression empty. Just another passenger. Noah grabbed Ethan's arm, his voice shaking. "We have to get out of here." But deep down, they already knew. There was no way off this train. And Marcus was just the first to take his seat. Marcus sat motionless, his eyes vacant, his body unnervingly still. He was there, but not really. "Marcus?" Jess whispered, stepping closer. No response. She reached out, hesitantly, her fingers trembling as they hovered over his shoulder. "Jess, don't," Noah warned, his voice barely above a breath. But before she could touch him, the train lurched violently. The lights flickered again, and for a fraction of a second, Marcus's face changed. His skin shrank against his skull, his eyes hollowing into dark voids, his mouth stretching into something wrong, too wide, too deep. The lights steadied. And he was back to normal. Sitting. Waiting. Jess stumbled away with a strangled gasp. "Did you see that? Did you see that?" Clara clutched the edge of a seat, her face pale. "Marcus is gone. That thing, that's not him." Ethan turned, running a hand through his hair, his breath coming in quick gasps. "We need to think. We need to." His voice trailed off. He was staring at the wall of the train car. The others followed his gaze. There, along the metal paneling, was a small, faded plaque. None of them had noticed it before. It was covered in names. Dozens. Hundreds. All neatly engraved in perfect rows. Noah stepped closer, his heart hammering. He traced a few of the letters with his fingers. "What is this?" Then, Clara's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Marcus's name is on it." They all froze. Jess shoved past Ethan, scanning the names frantically. And there it was. Marcus Holloway. His name was carved into the plaque, as if it had always been there. As if he had always been a passenger. Jess shook her head in disbelief. "No. No, this isn't real. This isn't." Then her breath caught. Because right below Marcus's name, a new name was appearing. The metal seemed to carve itself, the letters etching in real time. Letter by letter, the name took shape. Jessica Moore. The blood drained from her face. "No," she choked out, stumbling backward. "No, no, no." A soft breath passed through the train. A whisper. "It's your turn." The lights flickered. The train groaned, the metal beneath their feet trembling as if something vast and ancient was shifting just below. Then, a hand burst through the seat beside Marcus. Pale. Wrong. Fingers too long, nails cracked and broken. It grasped at the air, feeling, searching. Jess screamed. Ethan grabbed her wrist and yanked her back as more hands emerged, reaching through the gaps in the seats, through the floor, through the ceiling. Clara stumbled against Noah, her voice ragged. "We have to move." They bolted toward the next car. Noah reached the door first and shoved at it, his pulse hammering in his ears. "Come on, come on." It wouldn't budge. Behind them, the air filled with the sound of rustling fabric, of shifting bodies. Jess turned, her breathing ragged. Marcus was standing up. His movements were stiff, unnatural, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. And worse. His eyes were back. But they weren't his. They were deep, hollow pits. And they were looking right at her. A slow, unnatural smile spread across his face. "Your seat is waiting." Jess sobbed, pounding against the door. "Let us out." Noah clawed at the handle. Ethan threw his weight against it. Nothing. Then Clara screamed. They turned just in time to see something wrap around her ankle, pale fingers, twisting and contorting. They yanked. She went down hard. Jess and Ethan lunged, grabbing her arms, pulling with everything they had. But the train was pulling back. It wasn't just the hands. It was the seats. They were opening. Shifting. The fabric stretching into deep, gaping holes. Swallowing. Clara shrieked, kicking wildly. "Don't let go. Don't let go." Jess tightened her grip. "We've got you, we've got you." Noah looked around, desperate. "We need something, rope, anything." Ethan's eyes darted across the train, then landed on the emergency fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. Without thinking, he ripped it free. He turned, raised it high. And swung. The metal connected with Clara's captor with a sickening crunch. The thing hissed, a low, guttural sound that sent ice through their veins. But it worked. Clara's leg came free. The second she was loose, they threw themselves at the door, shoving, kicking, ramming into it. And then, without warning, it gave way. The four of them tumbled into the next train car, slamming onto the floor in a heap. Noah scrambled to his feet and slammed the door shut behind them. For a moment. Silence. Only their gasping breaths filled the space. Then Jess let out a choking sob. "He's gone." They turned, staring back through the door's window. Marcus stood motionless in the other car, still wearing that hollow, terrifying grin. The strange girl sat beside him. Waiting. The other seats. Empty, but expectant. Noah turned away, jaw clenched. "We can't stop. We have to keep going." Clara was still shaking, her face pale. "To where?" The conductor said there's no way off. Ethan took a deep breath, steadying himself. "There has to be." Noah nodded, scanning the new train car. And then his eyes landed on something. At the far end of the car, barely visible under the dim light. A staircase. Leading down. Jess swallowed hard. "Where the hell does that go?" Noah didn't answer. He just stepped forward. Because deep down, he knew. They were running out of time. And if they didn't find a way off this train soon, they would be the next names on the wall. The staircase yawned before them, disappearing into darkness. Ethan wiped his clammy hands on his jeans. "Nope. Absolutely not. We are not going down there." Noah tightened his jaw. "We don't have a choice." Behind them, the door rattled. A slow, rhythmic knocking. Jess turned, her breath hitching. Marcus was still there. But he wasn't alone anymore. More passengers had appeared. Silent figures in tattered coats, their faces obscured by shadows, their bodies rigid and waiting. Watching. The knocking became louder. Then, they started pressing against the glass. Their hands, pale, cold, hungry, pushed against the window. The door shuddered as they leaned forward in unison, their empty faces staring, staring, staring. A whisper slid through the air, crawling into their ears. "Seats are waiting." Jess bolted. She didn't need another second to think. She lunged for the staircase and started running. Noah, Ethan, and Clara followed, their footsteps pounding down the metal steps, spiraling deeper into the train's underbelly. The air turned thick. Heavy. Like something was breathing with them. The deeper they went, the colder it got. Then they reached the bottom. And found another train car. But this one was wrong. It was older. Dust-covered. The seats rotted, the walls rusted and peeling. A thick scent of decay filled the air. And along the walls. More names. So many names. Thousands. Jess stepped forward, her stomach twisting. She knew what she would see before she looked. And there it was. Her name. Ethan's name. Noah's. Clara's. They were already written. Clara let out a choked breath. But we're still here. Ethan turned, scanning the car. If our names are here, then. His words trailed off. At the far end of the car. A door. It was rusted, warped with time. But something about it was different. It wasn't like the others. It didn't belong to the train. It looked older. Jess's pulse pounded. That's it. That's the way out. Noah grabbed the handle. It was warm. Unlike everything else in this place, it felt alive. He pulled. The door groaned, decades of rust grinding against metal. A sickening screech filled the air. And then. It opened. Beyond it was darkness. Not the void outside the train. Something else. Something worse. And then. A hand grabbed Jess's wrist. She screamed. It was Marcus. But not Marcus. His face was peeling, his smile stretching too wide, his fingers digging into her skin like claws. You can't leave, he whispered, voice crackling like broken radio static. You're one of us now. She struggled. No, I'm not. We're not supposed to be here. He pulled. Hard. Noah and Ethan lunged, grabbing Jess, yanking her back. Marcus's eyes widened. And for a split second. It was really him. The real Marcus. His lips trembled. His voice, small. Broken. Don't leave me. Then. The darkness swallowed him. The train screamed. A deep, inhuman howl that rattled through the walls. The floor trembled. Seats split open. Hands reached from the shadows. Noah shoved Jess through the door. Clara and Ethan dove in after. And as the door slammed shut behind them, the train was gone. Underscore 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 underscore. Silence. The four of them lay sprawled on a cold, wet surface. Wind howled around them. The scent of damp concrete filled the air. Noah blinked, his body aching. They were on a train platform. Empty. Abandoned. A broken, out-of-service sign hung overhead, swinging weakly in the wind. Jess sat up, shivering. Did we? Clara pressed a hand to her face, shaking. We're back. Ethan exhaled a shaky breath, laughing and crying all at once. Holy shit. Noah swallowed hard. He turned back toward where the door had been. But there was nothing. No train. No tracks. Just an empty tunnel. Like it had never existed. The four of them sat in stunned silence, the reality sinking in. Then. Jess's phone buzzed. They all froze. Slowly, she pulled it from her pocket. Her screen was on. Battery full. Service restored. A single notification blinked at her. A missed call. From Marcus. Her fingers trembled. She tapped it. A voicemail. She pressed play. Static. Then a whisper. Where did you go? The message cut off. And on the platform wall, behind them, 4 new names were carved into the stone. The end.